Hello and welcome to the Print's SoftCover, the Print's platform for the launch of select non-fiction books. While I've participated on discussions with regard to launch of several books, this book is something that I actually read right from page 1 to the last page and earnestly. Why? Because this book brings out the story of someone who the country might not know completely, not many people would know, but he is actually one of the heroes that this country has produced. Well, I'm talking about the book Nimbu Saab, the Barefoot Naga Kargil hero, written by Neha Dwivedi and her sister Diksha Dwivedi. So, welcome to the print, both of you. My first question to you, Neha. It says Nimbu Saab, the Barefoot Naga Kargil hero. Who was Nimbu Saab?
So Nimbu Saab is actually what Captain Nike Zako Kenguruse, a Mahavir Chakra awardee of 2 Rajrif, was addressed as by his troops. You see, when you read his name, even when we read his name for the first time, and the many times that we've read it over the years, it seems a little complicated, right? We're not used to these long names and we're not able to pronounce them. So while his officers, his peers used to call him Nibu, the men used to, I think, for probably affectionately and for ease of pronunciation, started calling him Nimbu Saab. So Nimbu Saab is actually what Captain Nikizako Kenguruse was addressed as affectionately by his men. And who he is, he's just a simple Naga boy who had really extraordinary dreams, and his dreams were not just attached to his own life. His dreams were for his family at large. And this is the story of that man and how he achieved those dreams and how he dared and he went ahead. And the Barefoot Naga Kargil hero is a story in itself. Because that is more about the act in which he actually got his gallantry
The
award,
Mahavir
and
Chakra.
the Mahavir Chakra, the second highest gallantry award in the country. And he actually on those heights, just for the sake of better grip, took his shoes off, took the call to take his shoes off and, scale them bare feet to just get a better grip and to be able to do his duty to the best of his ability. And that is Nimbu Saab for you.
While, of course, we'll talk more about his exploits, why he is actually a hero. But, when I read your book, I realized that he was always a hero right from the very beginning. Now, he was someone who initially, he was it was a family of 3 brothers. But eventually, I think the family grew up to having about 13 odd siblings,
Yeah,
right?
13.
Yeah. So, but he was someone who was a hero in a sense right from the very beginning. If you could tell us, Diksha, about his childhood days, and what really made him join the Indian Army. And viewers, remember that he was a Naga officer, and at that time it was very rare for the Nagas to actually join the Indian Army. So, before we get into how he got into the Indian Army, tell us more about his childhood.
So, Snehesh, thank you for asking me that question because I always find it fascinating. Since the time that I read his letters that he wrote from Kargil to his family, I was always fascinated by how different his letters also read, actually. So I always have said that, soldiers, the way they think, the way they used to write letters back home, they're very similar in nature. But when you would read Nibu's letters to family, they were a little different. It was all about God. It was all about family and him being the parent to even his parents. So that's what Nibu was really since birth. He saw a lot of things as a kid, actually, right? Like separation of his parents, for example. a second marriage for his father, and then seeing a new family completely of 10 more siblings, really, and being actually the second son. So there was an older son, older
But he
brother
died.
that he, well, yeah, who died. And so when he died, uh, Nimbu took this call that, hey, I am going to be, I'm going to take responsibility of this family. I'm going to be the bread earner, because his father was a pastor. He didn't really make, as much money to actually support a family of 13. So Nimbu actually grew up when he was really young, honestly, and he started making money very quickly. And I think everything that he's done in his life, Snehesh, has been dedicated to his family in some sense, I would say, and I think that is where his dream of joining the army came, because a government job seemed like the most stable and the sensible job for his family, so that even if he's no more tomorrow, he will continue to support his family, and having that kind of uh, will and determination for your family is something that is unparalleled, honestly, and that's what I respect him for so much, that I think his story really is unique, I would say, out of all the war hero stories that I've read and heard to date.
So Diksha, your sister mentioned about the fact that he wanted a government job, but did he want just a government job? Because when I read your book, I realized that he got through a banking exam, he got into a life insurance exam, and then of course the CDS. What really made him, pick the uniform?
So this much was clear, that he wants a government job, okay, something that pays him a pension, is something that I've realized out of talking to so many, friends, family, brother, right? What made him choose uniform is the uniform, really. you know, uh, be having a chance at being the person from Nagaland to don this uniform and get some respect for his family and for his state, I would say, is probably the feeling that made him that made Nimbu choose the army. And Neha, I would actually, if there's anything for you to add, you can.
Yeah,
Neha, before you answer, I wanted to ask you, why is it a challenge for him? What's so special about Naga? Why is such a big thing that a Naga boy has joined the army?
So, as those of you who are aware of a little bit of the history would be aware of the fact that, the Nagas for a long time, really struggled with the presence of the army in general, of the Indian army in their state, and especially the Ngami tribe, the tribe that Nikezakuo belonged to. They had their own share of conflicts with the Indian army. So, even when, just to kind of take a step back and say that, I think that him choosing the uniform also came from a place of, he didn't just want money, or pension. Also, he wanted like a sort of status and respect for his family, right? The people who inspired him, he used to realize how, when you're an army officer's family, or when you're an army officer, the respect doesn't stay with you. Your wife's called as a ma'am, your parents are addressed as, little differently. So I think he had this whole idea of uplifting the status of his family in general. And for him, and especially for someone belonging to the Ngami tribe, to choose to go and fight with the Indian army for India was not a usual choice. And in fact, even when he did, clear these 3 exams, I started telling everybody that, okay, started trying to get an idea of what everyone thinks that he should do. He didn't really have many supporters in the beginning who supported the idea of joining the Indian army as opposed to, going for the bank job or the life insurance. But he was determined, and he wanted to do something. He wanted to don the uniform. He wanted to do something that would kind of command respect for him and his family too. And I think that's why it makes it so much more. It's, we always say, we always talk so much about the path less taken. For him, he didn't really have anyone around him to really inspire him, like in the family or extended family or friend circle, to really inspire him to join the army, which is why the story is different, right? When we speak about a lot of these young army officers, they usually, they have some inspiration. Someone's father's in the army, someone's brother, someone's best friend. People have different, those kind of inspirations to go for it. Nimbu did not have anyone to really follow. But he wanted it, for so such different reasons. And it was, if you think about it, it was a bit of a ball game for him. But well, I mean, now that as we know his story, we realize how loved and how accepted his eventual decision was and it brought a great amount of change in the state, in the youth of the state, in the thought process of the youth of the state in general, also in that sense. So.
You both have written this book along with his brother. So before we go further, tell me, what really inspired you to write this book? How did you come in contact with his brother? And what is it that you do? You both come from the military family yourself. If you could tell our viewers more about you.
Okay, so I'll tell you about me. So I have written a book on the Kargil War before a few years ago. It's called Letters from Kargil. I'm an entrepreneur, really. I run my own company. It's called Yoso Media. We do personal branding for leaders. But the whole passion for writing has really come from the fact that I think this is a very powerful weapon to change mindsets. I think, I've grown up as a daughter of a war martyr and have always thought that there is nothing that I can do that can ever come close to the kind of impact that my father created in this world. But can I do anything? And literally from that need of doing anything came writing. And the first ever story that I think I wrote, which created an impact for me, my family, and I don't know, in some sense, was a story that I wrote about my father. It was called A Kargil for Hero Nobody Talked About. He's my father. That was the title of the story, and that's why my book happened.
And
which is
Major C.B. Dwivedi.
Yes,
Major C.B. Dwivedi Sena Medal. And the story was written because I felt like we were a martyrs family for so many years, and the same stories used to be told every year. It took us 16 years to actually tell our father's story because nobody kind of asked us the whole story before that. So that is where it happened. And in my book, Letters from Kargil were also Nimbu's stories. Okay. And even then, when I was interviewed about my book, I used to be asked that, what is your favorite letter? And I always used to say, of course, like all letters are my favorite and I have learned something. But Nimbu's letters used to be my favorite. Actually, I used to be... they used to always, draw me to tears, really. And luckily, we actually met Atuli, who's Nimbu's brother, at Kargil Vijay Divas in Kargil in 2018 itself, I think. And then somehow the conversation happened, and here we are. I think we sealed the deal right there, where Atuli had luckily, obviously, read our books. And we started talking, and honestly, that we made this deal like then, but we're coming up with the book now. So that's my story.
Diksha, you wanted to say something.
No, I just wanted to say that, just in the sense that, how the book came about. It seems like Diksha wrote a book called Letters from Kargil, where she mentioned Nimbu's letters too. And after that, I wrote a book called Vijayant at Kargil, and essentially Captain Thapar and Captain Kengrusi are the same regiment. During the course of my...
Rifles.
Right, that's right, to Rajrif. And during the course of my research also, everybody would often talk about him too, right? And because there were these 3 youngsters who joined the regiment together, and 2 of them are war heroes now, and 1 is still serving in the army. Somehow, as luck would have it, both of us had some kind of a relationship with his story too. So it's sort of uncanny in that sense. And I was also always intrigued about him, because whenever I would ask his other people about him. What would he speak about? What would he talk? People would say he was quiet. He was quiet. He was not a very. He would be very dutiful. Like if he would not be a part of all the fun and games too much, and it seemed as if he was always very focused on what he has to do and everything. So I was always very intrigued about that. And I had also read Diksha's books. So I also always used to think that, okay, are we ever going to read about his story? But you understand that someone actually has to go sit with them, kind of
Exactly.
get the whole sense of it. And unless someone is willing to do that, we will not hear his story, or people, belonging to those sides of the country and their stories, right? So I think that that's really what kind of egged us on, because we really wanted to kind of, just because, Diksha started writing about that, my father's story. And I also used to write at that time whenever we started doing this. But we could write, right? We had a platform. But, just because not everybody is doing that, their stories also deserve to be told. So
And his
that's
brother was
essentially
very keen. His brother was very keen that
yeah,
the captain's story should be told. But tell me, I
yeah,
was reading this book. You've written this book along with a brother, but his
yeah,
brother had stopped talking to the captain, right?
yeah, yeah.
Immediately after passing out. So, what was this? Tell our viewers about what really happened then, and how did this
So
brother really change? His younger brother, for that matter.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's the most poignant part of the story. Definitely for Diksha and me, I'm pretty sure, because we are siblings also, right? So for us to be writing about Atule and Nimbu in that sense, it was a sort of a cathartic process also. Now, Atule and Nimbu were also really, really close. Even though they had 13 siblings, they were really, really close growing up. And though Nimbu, kind of acquired the role of the parent and the provider because he used to earn and everything before them, when he was going to IMA, that role, the shoes were kind of filled by Atule. And they had like an understanding that, which was that when he will get commissioned and start drawing a regular salary, is when Atule, will go back to doing whatever he needs. Until then, Atule promised him that he will kind of stall his studies and and teach and earn for the rest of the family until Nimbu can get back to doing the same. And so he held fort, and according to him, he did everything that, to the best of his ability. He sacrificed his time and fun and all of that at that time, right? And when he was getting commissioned, Atule was kind of happy because he thought, like Nimbu is also going to be happy with him, and he's going to now Atule can actually ask for something also, because he's held his side of the fort. And Atule, in that sense, how dutiful Nimbu was. Atule was the opposite. He was the fun guy, who just wanted to chill, who just wanted to, live his life.
The
And
younger
he,
one.
and he, yeah.
I said the younger one.
The younger one, yeah, yeah. He was a quintessential younger one, right? Like the other one can have the responsibilities, I have the fun. But he held fort to the best of his capability, and he did well. So he thought that, now's the time, and if he'll demand for something, he'll get it. And so he demanded for something from Nimbu. And just, in the interest of the book, I won't really give all the details. But he demanded, and Nimbu refused. And he didn't know why Nimbu refused, but he just, at that time, he was just a 20, 21-year-old guy, Atule himself. And he was upset about the fact that, the least his brother could do was give him what he wanted. And so he was so angry. Now, we have to understand it was also a different time and age for him. But he was so angry that his expression of that anger was like not talking to Nimbu at all. And I think he didn't really understand the gravity of the situation while he was at war also. So even when Nimbu came home, he would just, keep that distance and not speak to him a lot and everything, until what we all know what happened. And he received a letter that he received after the news of his martyrdom. And in that letter, at the end of the letter, Nimbu had written to him saying, why don't you talk to me? I am your loving brother. And I think even when Atule talks about this now, even, his eyes well up, our eyes well up, because we're like, that's a big weight to live with, right? to not be able to speak to your
Absolutely.
brother till the end of his life for a small thing. And I think he had been carrying that weight for a long time. So for him also, it was a very, very important story to be told to the world, and in authenticity. He's mentioned the things that it's very hard to mention your flaws like that, or very hard to come across like that person who did not want to do that or did not want to speak to him or whatever. But he's done that. And I think that's a beautiful kind of reason, and it gives so much more gravitas to the whole story in general.
Absolutely, because if one reads, he would always be afraid of people judging him. People can easily judge him
Yeah,
for what he did, right? But he
yeah,
still opens up his heart and
yeah,
talks about it. You know, uh,
yeah.
while this book dwells into his childhood aspects, which is very fascinating. For someone, I was born in Bihar, brought up in Delhi. Originally, my parents are
Oh
from
wow,
Kerala, but
same.
I've always okay, oh good. And but we've lived in cities. This book brings out the dynamics of a young boy from a very poor family, and also someone who, as the book says and as they themselves feel, who were so far away from India at that time. Right? For example, this book says that they used to get upset about the fact that किसी IAS officer को अगर punishment posting देना है तो नागालैंड भेज दो. So they used to get upset over these things. But you know coming to the action itself, what really happened in Kargil? Why did he get his MVC?
That's actually the story that I've always found so surprising, right? Because he is someone who is a quiet in a crowd. He'll be the quiet guy, silent observer, etc. Right? And when it actually came down to taking a bold decision, because if he was leading his platoon to
Right.
action, he just made the boldest one. I think his buddies, when they would have read their news, they're like, yeah, he did seem like the dutiful guy who would do anything to win or to complete his task. But to actually take off your shoes, boots in minus 10 degrees, just so that you can lead by example, because if he had not done it, his boys will not, right? And so that is I think that is the bold decision, according to me, that gave him the MVC, because they were at a very, very catch
Precarious
22,
situation.
I
Yeah.
would say, right? And had they not done that, they would have not been able to capture the point they had been tasked to do, right? And this decision of his actually changed the course of that action completely. So they could do it, and then in the process they lost their lives, but their other buddies from Turajrif itself could actually capture the point because he took this decision of taking off the boots. So I think Nimbu. Without this, I think it's quite a turning point in that, right? And it was a crucial point for the whole peak of Tololing to be captured, to
Yeah.
actually, lead Indian Army to victory in this war. So I think surprising, and of course I would let the viewers just read the book to actually understand what really happened at that point. Yeah.
Absolutely. But thank you so much for writing this book, because, as I said, this book really brings about the true story of a hero. It's not just what the act that he did, because the citations will always reveal that, but also what really made him turn out to be the officer that he was, who led from the front. So thank you
Absolutely.
so much, both of you, for writing this book. And viewers, do read this book to understand the journey of a young, timid boy who was also good at cracking jokes, who was a second son, but eventually turned out to be a parent for the entire family. And his journey from a small town in Nagaland, cut off from the so called mainland, how he became one of the true heroes of the country. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you, Snehesh.
Thank you so
Thank you
much,
for being here.
Snehesh.